Hi friends, Angelica Veneta, co-chair of Inclusive ICR. We are a coalition of over 220 employers in Eastern Iowa, all working together to grow the diversity and inclusion of our workforce, to create a space where employees feel a sense of belonging, included, and valued. Inclusive ICR is a proud sponsor of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion track of the Iowa Ideas Conference. As you participate today, be sure to connect with other Inclusive ICR champions, as we'd love to share information with you about our upcoming coalition meetings, projects, and how our work is impacting positive social change in our region. Be sure to check out our website at inclusivicr.org for upcoming events and our e-newsletter. Thank you and have a great conference.
Good afternoon and welcome to our final session of the Arts and Culture track for this year's Iowa Ideas Conference. And our time together will include talking with our panelists and addressing audience questions. And so feel free to submit your questions and we will add them into the mix. And so I am Diana Nollen, the arts and entertainment writer at the Gazette. I've been affiliated with the paper for 40 years now, and I've been involved in the arts and entertainment community in the corridor in Cedar Rapids and Iowa City for all of that time. So this is a thrill today. We have panelists Sean Ulmer, Jason Anderson, and Jeff Capps, and we're going to be talking about rebuilding the arts audience. So I will let our panelists introduce themselves a little further. Sean, let's start with you.
Okay, thank you, Diana. Sean Ulmer, Executive Director of the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art. Been at the museum since 2005, first as curator and then took over as director in 2014.
Jason?
Jason Anderson, General Manager of Extreme Arena, Green State Family Fieldhouse, and the rink at Coral Ridge Mall. Formerly with VenueWorks of Cedar Rapids, most recently with the Paramount Theater for many years, but recently at Coralville now.
How long have you been at Coralville now, Jason?
Came down in December, so where are we at? 10 months, I guess.
Okie doke. And Jeff.
Hello, Jeff Capps, Executive Director of the Iowa Children's Museum in Coralville at the Coral Ridge Mall. And I've been here since January of 2019. So had a year or so under my belt before things got pretty weird. And I was previously the Executive Director of Cedar Valley Habitat for Humanity in Cedar Rapids for about a decade. So have been in nonprofit work for about 2 decades, and about half of that was in Cedar Rapids. So I live in Iowa City, so I consider myself a true corridorian through and through, and just love this community. So it's always a thrill to be able to talk about all the good things happening here. So thanks for having me, Diana.
Oh, my pleasure, believe me. So let's just start in this day and age of instant gratification, where the world of arts and entertainment is just a click away on whatever smart device you have at your fingertips. And so many people are preferring to binge watch or Zoom from home. Let's talk about how your organizations are vying to get people back into your physical spaces. And Jason, please feel free to talk about both what you were doing at VenueWorks and at Extreme. So let's start with Sean. I'm just going to kind of go by my Brady Bunch configuration on the screen.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. It's interesting. We saw as we sort of came out of the pandemic, or the worst of the pandemic, since we're still in it, that people were anxious to get back out again. So, people met us more than halfway in coming back. And we certainly provided a lot of programming while people were cooped up and sort of stayed in front of them. But people were really anxious to get back out to be with other people. And those who were interested in the visual arts, coming to the art museum, they were starved to have that one-on-one experience with the artwork again. It reminds me a little bit of when art museums started loading their collections online. There was a lot of concern in my sector that people would stop coming if they could see everything online. but the data actually proved the opposite. Seeing it online prompted people to come into to visit in person, which seems a little counterintuitive, at least it did to my mind. But the data was there, and I think we saw an echoing of that when people were able to get vaccinations and felt more comfortable coming out. We had them come out, and I would say last year's numbers for 21, we were about 80% of our normal attendance. So people, as soon as they could get those vaccinations and felt more comfortable coming out into the public arena and being with other people, came out in droves. And so we're very pleased to be sort of at 80%. Hopefully we'll do better even this year.
Well, and I remember during the pandemic shutdown, you had just opened the Impressionist exhibit, which was supposed to be your big centerpiece of your anniversary season. Was it the 125th? 150th?
Yeah, 125, 125.
Oh, okay.
Don't make us any older than we already are, that's for sure. No.
Yeah,
I mean,
nobody wants to be made older than they already are.
There's no good time for a pandemic, but happening just after we launched our 125th anniversary year was a very bad time for us because we had a major exhibition that opened in February, and it was a very expensive exhibition of French and American Impressionists work, which was, the kind of artwork that was being made at the time that we were founded in 1895. And so we wanted to do that show. We wanted to kick off the year. We had an entire year of major exhibitions lined up. And 6 weeks into this traveling show, we had to shut down. And so that was disappointing. But, we pivoted. I mean, I know that's a word overused perhaps during the pandemic, but we really did, because we actually shut down a week before the governor's orders. And even though we really didn't have the technology, individual staff members had enough things like video cameras and so forth. We actually began filming in the galleries right away, and while the staff was still here. And so we captured a number of very, very basic, not very professional chats in front of some of the works of art that were on loan to us. Both myself and the curator did this. And so we began creating a series of outreach video programming that previously did not exist at all. I looked back at our YouTube page, and there's nothing before March of 2020, but there are 107 videos on there now that are a direct result of the effects of the pandemic. So we were able to kind of make lemonade out of this one. Fortunately, of course, all of the venues got affected who were borrowing the show. So when we were able to reopen in June, we were able to extend the show, even though many, many people were not comfortable coming out in the summer of 20, understandably. But some did. Of course, we had all of the protocols in place, and we are a very large space. You can very easily socially distance in our space. But we did the best we can. Our entire schedule shifted as a result. So all of the things, we ended up doing all the things we were planning to do in 2020, but sometimes it shifted into 21 and in some cases into 22.
Excellent. How about you, Jason? What rocked your world? How did you, get people into your spaces?
I guess we kind of we pushed the envelope. I'm not sure if you were there that night, but the night that the governor came on TV and said Iowa is shutting down, we had a sold out Queen tribute show. So we had an absolute packed house. I think she came on at 8 o'clock and we had a 7:30 show. So it's not like I was going to stop the show and say, okay, everybody's got to leave now. So we kind of went right up to that 12th hour. And then, we really just shut down. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we have done at the Paramount or the Self Center, all of that, a lot of those artists were kind of doing their own live streams or Zoom videos and all that. So we didn't really have anything in that market, so to speak. But as soon as restrictions started to lighten up, obviously we opened the amphitheater first. That outdoor business came back first. So the amphitheater started getting some shows, socially distanced, spreading everybody out was just kind of a nightmare. Trying to separate everybody. Again, in our worlds, we are here to gather people, and that's the last thing that anybody wanted to do, was to gather with anyone else other than your immediate family type of thing. But so we kind of slowly came back. Amphitheater opened first. The U.S. South Center, which is now the Powerhouse, kind of opened second. Again, they had more seats to spread people out with. And then the Paramount came back online, I think maybe October of 2020. Again, some smaller stuff. And as restrictions lightened up, as vaccines, started being more available, we just kind of kept building the audiences back. Obviously, it was slow. I would say it's still slower than we ever were. 2019, specifically with Paramount Theater, was probably our best year to date. That fall, that winter, so many shows sold so well. We had a bunch of stuff stacked up for that spring season as well to finish really strong. And then we postponed everything for 6 months, and then we postponed it for another 6 months, and then we just kept kicking that can down the road. And I think, again, I've been removed for 10 months at this point, but I think Seinfeld might be that last COVID postponement that's still another 8 months away. I think he's supposed to finally come back in like June of next year, but it was kind of that same, when can we get it back? When can we get back? And it's kind of dependent on that artist of when they're finally going to hit the road. And a lot of them have already done that, but there definitely are some that have waited until they can really comfortably pack a house. So.
Yeah, because it's not in their economic favor to play to a small crowd when you have somebody like ZZ Top or Dolly Parton, or a big act with an entourage of all sorts of technological and support folk.
For sure.
They're just not going to be in there. And if I remember correctly from my reporting and from what I was hearing, the South Center was pretty much credited with being one of the first venues in the nation to reopen with a concert. And I wish I could remember. I should have looked it up before this session.
They absolutely were. I think it was September. It was a country artist. We were the first in the nation to open back up to that scale. I'm sure there were some clubs or some other stuff, but we really were the first arena to social distance everybody and play a show. So I remember all those production guys. They'd been sitting around for however many months. They were ready to go, and people were excited to be back. And we were a little bit surprised that we were the first ones, and we kind of had to double check things, like, are we really? But so yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty wild. And then
it's kind of funny how you kind of see when we reopen, like, who was somewhat desperate for a paycheck. Jerry Seinfeld's not desperate for a paycheck, so therefore, he pushed 3 years out. But yet some of those tribute acts or some of those smaller, guys that didn't have that income for 18 months, they were the ones that were pushing to get back on the road. So.
I remember it was so interesting, and I can't remember how long ago it was, but it feels like shortly after Seinfeld ended its run on television, Jerry Seinfeld appeared at the Des Moines Civic Center, and he came out on stage that night, and he said, "You know what? I have enough money. I'm going to refund all your tickets." I didn't think the standing ovation and the cheering would ever end. It was like, okay, sit down so we can do the show. But that was very magnanimous of him, and so I can totally understand why he was one who was willing to say, yeah, let's just wait and we'll do it a little bit later.
For sure.
Quite the guy. Jeff, you have a venue that normally is crawling with children, the ones who could not get vaccinated. the ones who were among the most vulnerable, how in the world did you try to rebuild your audience?
Yeah, I was struck by Sean talking about how kind of ahead of the curve they were in grabbing their video cameras and phones or whatever and making these videos. And it reminded me of, nobody wants to like relive the good old days of the heat of the pandemic, but we have some probably slightly embarrassing videos on our YouTube channel as well, some of which are me like in the museum by myself in front of the turtle tank on St. Patrick's Day. I remember vividly because it would have been at the very beginning when we first shut down. And I'm all, decked out in green and I'm like, hey, happy St. Patrick, and like, we'll see you guys real soon, and it's like looking back at those things, which I try not to do, but on the occasion that I have seen them, it sounds like I'm looking at them every night, right? Like, oh, that video, I remember that one. No. But just thinking about that, like it was, oh yeah, we'll see you in a week or two. I remember telling my staff, like and I'm sure we all have these stories, but yeah, I think we're going to be closed until March 30th. That's the plan. And gosh, and it was, oh man, we were closed for 4 months. So one thing that occurs to me though, just in terms of a couple things for us, bringing people back together. We all have these great places, and thinking about now the Extreme Arena and of course the Paramount, such a beautiful place, and the Art Museum and these are special places, but they're only, the magic is only there when there are people in them, and that sounds like a obvious thing to say, but I think that was so obvious during the pandemic. I mean, I was coming in, working from home and coming in to get the mail and feed the fish and the turtle and just walking into this place, and it was day after day, and it was horrible. I mean, so sad. And so when people finally started coming back and you just see these things happening, I guess that's what just restores my faith. And we had all the same things in our part of the sector where it was, is this the end of children's museums? The high touch thing, like you said, Diane. I mean, this is what our business is built on: kids touching things, doing things, gathering together, interacting with one another. And luckily this has not proven to be the death knell of children's museums, that people are coming back and we're doing a lot of the same kinds of things. And thankfully thanks to science and, people generally taking care of themselves and taking care of each other, I think has made all the difference. So we continue to bounce back pretty well, probably similar to Sean's trajectory in terms of the kind of the 80% has kind of been a slow build, but we're doing pretty well in that regard. But just the magic is in people gathering together, and we know that. But I think until that was taken away, it was hard to really have a true appreciation for that. And so yeah, it's been great getting people back in the space, and we're continuing to update exhibits and just feeling obviously more and more inspired about doing that probably than ever before.
When did you start letting folks back in? Because I know it was a small effort. I don't know if it was just your members and their kids or how, but I know you came back gradually. So can you tell us a little bit about how you did that?
We did. So we were closed for just about 4 full months and totally closed. So between mid-March and mid-July. And then, we did a couple of kind of like a soft reopening with all of our protocols in place and, 6 times as many hand sanitizing stations and all those things that all of us did. So we had a couple of member days, but then we started doing time ticketing, as a lot of institutions did, or I shouldn't say time ticketing. We did not do time ticketing. We just did like play sessions, as we call them. So like we started with 2 play sessions per day, and they were limited by capacity. And then we had different capacity limits on certain exhibits where we put little vinyl discs on the floor that messed up our carpet ultimately, but that's beside the point. But just ways to try to keep people safe as much as possible. So yeah, it was a slow rebuild, but then I would say probably by summer of 21 or fall of 21, once vaccines were really rolling, a lot of that stuff we started to roll back, and the online ticketing was not great for our model. I think for some children's museums it worked okay and they continued to do it, but for us we were happy to move on from that for sure. We're still, like others, still have some protocols in place, but for the most part, probably by about a year ago, we really started to roll a lot of that back.
Well, Jason, I remember some of my friends talking to me about they got a kick out of when they first started going back to the Paramount, and I'm not sure if you were still there then. I think you were, where there were kitschy little signs around that made reference to "Don't stand too close together,"
Yeah.
and just kind of entertainment related jargon in the bubbles of how you were supposed to behave. Did you find that people were fairly respectful of keeping some sort of physical distance when everybody's excited about a show? They tend to cram together. So
Yeah, I would say Paramount specifically. I mean, that's just such a iconic venue that everybody walking in there, I think, just has that different feeling. They play by the rules a whole lot more. When we were doing stuff at the arena or even outside, I would say the kind of respect level was very different. So really at the Paramount, everybody played by the rules. We didn't have to fight the mask that much. People just understood, that's what the world we live in now. But it was a challenge outside. How do you force somebody to wear a mask outside? So it was really that we kind of went in like, okay, we're going to do this. And then we just got beat down so much that you're like, you're right, we're outside. I'm not going to continue to, enforce that. But yes, I mean, marketing department did a great job when we had the don't stand so close to me songs, or that signs, or in the bathroom, we had the whole, you got to wash your hand to Bon Jovi's, whatever it may be, or, just some of that silly stuff. But yeah, try to bring some light to, some of the stuff we had been dealing with. But
now, how did you start bringing people into the Extreme Arena? Because I know I was down there for Disney on Ice, and that was one of my first forays back into an arena setting, which felt good and weird. So
yeah, so this arena opened September of 2020, on schedule. That was the plan before the world shut down. They essentially pushed through and got things ready to go for the potential Hawkeye volleyball season. The NCAA did cancel that fall and pushed it to the spring. So really, I was not here for it, but very, very slow opening for the arena. I think they had a monster truck show that fall. But, one good thing about, I don't know if it's good, I don't know if that's the right term, but the thing about our arena here, it's very sports driven, having, sports tenants. I would say it's what kept the arena alive during that. I mean, sports was really that one of those first things to come back. Again, Iowa being the first state to bring back softball and baseball. Those were the first sports, like in high school sports in the country, to come back. And then we went straight into football season, volleyball season, all of that type of stuff. So it's what kept this building afloat, in my opinion, doing all the wrestling events, doing, Hawkeye volleyball, giving some of that content where those traveling productions, those concerts may not have been back in full force. I would say they're still not back in full force, but so that's kind of the extreme side of things, but extreme arena side of things, I should say.
It works either way. And
right.
I know that Sean and Jeff, you both, I applauded and I reported on your ability to think outside the box. Like Sean at the Art Museum, you had someone who made cookies that reflected a major piece of art that we might see on the wall down there. And I think they were sold somehow. What was that little project?
Well, that actually came internally. Our registrar, who likes to bake, said, she wondered if she could, since she was working at home, it was a little bit difficult to do everything in her job that she normally does from home. She wondered if she could take a portion of her time and do these sort of, do kind of a social media series of creations that were based on works of art. So I said, sure, let's, we're always looking to expand our social media footprint. And she had the interest and the ability. And so she created a monthly social media post that were some of her creations in the kitchen, mostly the sweet, but sometimes the savory, that reflected the works of art in some way. Sometimes it was just sort of a point of departure. She wasn't trying to mimic the works of art through her cooking, but it was very different, and certainly different for us, a little bit outside the box. And people, were very much paying attention to what we were doing on social media, especially. And we never had what I would call a great presence on social media. We had a good one, but not a great one. We certainly bolstered that up during the pandemic. And like I said, we had really no presence on YouTube prior to the pandemic. And so, we really saw this as an opportunity, and it really was. And as things improved, with the pandemic, several of the people who followed us on a national and international basis reached out to say, please do not stop. We still want to receive this kind of content from you. And we realized then that we had developed a national and international audience that we needed to continue to feed. And that posed all kinds of problems, because as we were coming back to in-person programming, we're like, well, we've got this whole other body of people out there who want to hear from us, but they live in Canada or Germany or in New York, and they want to hear from us. So we have had to, as a result, create kind of a hybrid program of our educational programming, in that we are doing in-person programming now again, and we've created a whole new series of specifically digital programming for our national and international audience who participate in our programs that way. We don't say take a camera into a regular program that we're doing in the galleries. Instead, we're creating very specific programming for our national and international audience. So we've created a series of quarterly programs called Grant Wood in Focus, in which we look at different aspects of Grant Wood's life and career for our Grant Wood audience. And we've just launched a new program of monthly, very short, 30-minute programs called One Night Stand, where we look at one work of art. We present it sort of over the course of 20 minutes. We contextualize it. We talk about it and have people focus on that with 10 minutes for Q&A at the end. It's a very brief program in the evenings. And we have good success with people tuning in, but actually an even greater success with people seeing it afterwards on YouTube. What we've noticed is that we might have an audience of 20 or 30 people live, but then, we'll load it onto YouTube. We'll have 60, 80, 100 people view it on YouTube afterwards when it works with their schedule. So one of the things that we've learned is, in cultivating this national and international audience, is they want to see their content when it's convenient for them, not necessarily for when it's convenient for us to present it. So that's where it's just sort of been a wonderful hand in glove kind of thing, where we record our digital content and then upload it to YouTube. And that has allowed us to reach an audience that may not be able to join us at a specific day and time.
And that's exactly the reason why we are recording all of these sessions, and they will all go online, I believe, next week. And so folks who weren't able to join us today will still be able to see the content and hear what all our different presenters and all of our different topics, all of their ideas and ways of coping, because that's a big topic this time around as we're coming out of the double whammy of the pandemic and the derecho. And Jeff, I know down at the Children's Museum, you put together curbside kits, didn't you? That kids, or you could mail them, or the families could stop and pick them up and take them home. And then my favorite one was thinking outside the box by putting boxes out in the public that were either red, blue, yellow, or I think maybe green. And everything inside was that color, and encourage people to look in and engage with whatever was in the boxes. And I don't remember exactly. So maybe you can let people know a little bit better, because it's been a while since I've written those stories.
Yeah, no, thanks for bringing that up. That was something that I was going to mention, so I'm glad you brought it up. They were called ICMs, which is a play on the ICM, and they were just large I Spy boxes. And actually, one of them is still here in the mall. The red one is right outside Jason's rink here, and then we have one at the Green State Credit Union over on Mormon Trek, and another one at the North Liberty Library, and then one that's under repair. It met its demise in downtown Iowa City, I think, after a late night. Somebody decided that they wanted to see if it would topple over, and it did. Right in front of City Hall and the police station and the fire station. We thought, oh, surely it'll be safe here, and we did have permission, but someone. So, anyways, long story short, a lot of fun, and that was as I was thinking about ways that we. Our favorite word, as Sean said, pivoted. That was one that we're particularly proud of. And I think that's just indicative of, and we're not alone in this, obviously, but talking about the digital outreach, but then also thinking about going to people where they are. And that's always been kind of a cornerstone of our work, recognizing that we have this beautiful space here at the mall, but our organization is more than this space, and so that's always been something that we have tried to emphasize and find creative ways to go out. But that was certainly highlighted during the pandemic, and so it continues to be something that we're trying to do more and more of. So the ICMs were an example of that. The play packs, which you referred to, was another example, and I think a lot of organizations found those kind of play and learn at home opportunities meaningful, and it had our brand too. It wasn't just something that was from another, large educational company, but something that felt authentically the Iowa Children's Museum. And so we're proud of those things, but also glad to be returning to that regularly scheduled programming. But definitely some takeaways, things that we've certainly continued to do.
Diane,
Excellent.
if I may
Yes.
jump in, just one of the things we
You bet.
discovered in doing a lot of this digital programming, especially when we did like our Doodlebugs programs for preschoolers, and we were doing them on Zoom, we did encounter a number of difficulties because we did not realize to what extent we served a population that did not have ready access to digital platforms, digital devices by which to access our programming. So what we discovered is that in a household where everyone's working from home, parents might need the digital devices, and the children didn't have recourse to join our digital programming specifically designed for children. And we realized in the process that we have a very large audience of people who have a limited number of electronic devices in their homes. And so that was a great challenge for us to kind of to sort of, it was a great revelation for us because we don't gather that kind of data about the people that we serve. But we realized very quickly that there are a large number of families in our community that have a limited number of electronic devices in their houses and cannot always do the kind of programming that we are putting out by electronic means. So that was kind of a revelation for us that we really had not anticipated.
And as we're looking down the road, how do you endeavor to get back to the numbers you had in 2019? Or your very pre-pandemic salad days where you get lots of people through the doors. Jason, what's the long-term plan to get more people in the seats down at the Extreme Arena?
It's a great question. No, I mean, for me in this kind of new role, I continue to kind of build out the content that's at the arena, that's at the field house, doing more youth sports over there. That's at the ice rink, it's just continue to, like I've done over the years, provide more and more content, more and more ability for people to be exposed to what we're doing. I mean, the virtual thing is great, but there's nothing like, live entertainment, that feeling you get from that bass of the music, or that cheer of the crowd, I just kind of have to bank on people get tired of looking at that screen and want to experience it for themselves, in person. And we just continue to, hopefully snowball numbers and just continue to spread our message. I mean, for me in this new building, we're so new, and there's so many people that don't know about us yet. So we continue to market and tell our story there and get people to come.
Didn't you have a dinosaur stomping event down there? How did that go? I know that Disney on Ice, I saw lots of little kids dressed up in their prince and princess attire and taking photos in the lobby and doing all sorts of little extra engagement activities. But you also had dinosaurs, didn't you?
We did, yeah. We had a nice little run in the spring, some family shows. After Disney on Ice, we did Paw Patrol, a couple of shows of that. And then we did a Jurassic Quest Live, which was, the interactive dinosaur. Kind of unique to this building, having the field house right next door. It's 32,000 feet of basketball courts. But we used that space for all their blow-ups. So they had a bunch of bounce houses and interactive, you could dig for bones and some sand. And so really utilizing the full footprint of our space to have those interactions that Jeff has. There's nothing like feeling that and experiencing. You'll never see the texture of that painting on Sean's back wall there unless you really see it with person. And that's what we kind of have to bank on, in my opinion, of people kind of giving up on the flat screen and experiencing for themselves. But
so what can people do? What can the actual, how can Iowans get involved in maintaining and rising above to keep us on radar so that we aren't just Iowa flyover state? Because we know it's come and sit down and set a spell, don't fly over. So what can the average person do? Sean, what can people do to help your mission of getting more folks back into the museum?
Well, first of all, they can come out and they can visit our wonderful organizations. I mean, we're blessed really in this state to have so many extraordinary organizations that provide incredible arts and culture content for not just the people who live here, but also people who are visiting here. I mean, we certainly welcome people from all over the country in person as well as virtually, and even in 2020, we had visitors from 45 states and 9 foreign countries when we were in lockdown. It's frightening, but it's true. People do come here if you give them something. And to echo what Jason was saying, it's really about content. I mean, if we want to get back to our 100% or go above where we were before, a lot of it's going to depend on the shows that we do, what is going to draw people in. That has always been sort of at the core. If you have shows that nobody wants to come and see, well, guess what? They're not going to come and see it. So, and sometimes you do them anyways because they're the right show to do, and you want to bring that to your local audience. But then you balance that with shows that people will come to, so that you can get people out. So, I mean, I think people in Iowa need to support their local arts and culture organizations because those arts and culture organizations are vital to their local economies. I mean, people don't talk enough about how arts and culture are a really important economic driver in this state, and then tell their friends and family to do the same. And when they have out-of-town visitors or guests who are coming to see them, make sure they stop in to see all these wonderful treasures that this state has to offer.
Thank you so much. We have about 1 minute left. Jeff, how would you like to wrap this up? What can people do to help the Children's Museum reach its mission of getting more folks in?
I'm going to say what Sean wouldn't say, and that's that we need them to open their checkbooks. I mean, yes, we need them to come support the great content that the three of us and so many others are providing. But for folks who have the capacity to give, many of those organizations are nonprofits. And so I think that's an easy thing to kind of forget with an organization like ours that's an attraction and you pay admission or you pay for a membership. But, what allows us to do that extra stuff, what allows Sean to do the shows that are maybe not huge money makers, but are the right show to do, like he said, or that allow us to go out and do these free community events. We had 55 things on our calendar, offsite things on our calendar this summer, and probably turned down 55 others that we couldn't do because we just didn't have the capacity. So those are the extras. When people contribute, when we get the grants, when we get the individual donors, that's what gives us the confidence from a fiscal standpoint that we can schedule staff and bring together volunteers to support those kinds of things. So that's my, I guess, final plug. But I just echo everything that Jason and Sean said. We are so fortunate to be in a community like this that has so many great, extraordinary venues and organizations. It's easy to take it for granted. And I know there are those nights where I'm like, I go home and I just, I'm tired, but then I look at that thing on my counter, that postcard, I was like, oh, I really wanted to go to that show. And so I have to remind myself of that too, because it's easy to say, oh yeah, those things will just always be there. Well, we know that's not the case. And so I hope that folks will take that to heart in all respects.